And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Chicago Perspectives. I'm Mark Stevenson. I'm your host for this evening, and tonight we have an exciting show for you. We have 7th District Cook County Commissioner Jesus Chuy Garcia. Welcome to today's show.
Great to be on your show tonight, Mark.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Commissioner, and I really appreciate that you are taking time for your busy schedule running for Chicago's mayor's spot. And we are really excited to have you. So let's really get right into the show. Why exactly are you running for mayor?
I decided to make this run because I believe that Chicago is not working for all of its people. As a matter of fact, it's only working for a select few. The neighborhoods have been left to fend for themselves. Public safety and trust in public safety, confidence is at an all-time low in recent memory. And schools are struggling, especially some of the actions that this mayor has taken to close an unprecedented number of schools that makes us a leader nationally. I would say that ordinary people have been cast aside and forgotten. I believe that what needs to happen is that people in neighborhoods throughout Chicago need to come together. They need to take their city back. They need to be felt. They need to make their presence known. And they ought to be at the decision-making table, especially in the most important decisions that impact the quality of life of the city of Chicago.
I see, Commissioner, but we're trying to get to the real truth about why you really want to run for mayor. You see, there's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's the real truth. So let's get to Commissioner Garcia's truth. I understand that you previously served in the city council, for example, and that you had some relationship with Harold Washington when he was mayor. Is that so?
Of all the candidates running, I'm the only one who has served in 3 legislative bodies. In the 80s, as a very young alderman, allied with Harold Washington, and glad to say that my election helped Harold Washington win a majority in the Chicago City Council. It broke the back of the old Chicago Verdoliak 29 machine in Chicago politics, and it ushered in a new period of government that gave us Chicago's most representative government in terms of opening the doors up for minorities, for women, for people who before couldn't come to City Hall, couldn't make themselves heard, were invisible. Harold Washington and the new government embraced everyone in Chicago. There was greater transparency, there was fairness, there was a fair allocation of resources across neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. That's the spirit of my candidacy to run for mayor in the 21st century, to bring together Chicago's neighborhoods, to establish a new set of priorities rooted in fairness and equity, and to really usher in a new era of prosperity in Chicago's neighborhoods. Chicago's neighborhoods have been hurting, especially since the Great Recession, and we need to focus and be strategic about making investments there to make them safe, to provide good schools, and then to create and to enable local economic development to prosper. Chicago cannot be this shiny city center in the downtown area while the neighborhoods struggle. If Chicago is going to be a truly world-class city in the 21st century, it needs to have vibrant neighborhoods. That is my top priority as mayor of the city of Chicago.
Well, Commissioner, I understand that you were a young alderman. Now, let's talk about your experience as an alderman, because we need to know that you're going to know how to run this city. You were assigned to doing some committee work as an alderman. What did you do? What were your accomplishments as alderman?
During my aldermanic years, I chaired the Committee on Aviation. It was the period in Chicago when the People Mover was built at O'Hare Airport, one of the most significant modernization programs that has made O'Hare the economic engine in the region that it has evolved in becoming. It was a very important time. I was an activist legislator, a citizen legislator during that time, and I've maintained that spirit and that attitude about public service, always fighting for transparency, for reform, for ethics, and inclusion of all people in the life of the city.
Commissioner, what do you think are some of the critical issues that the everyday citizen faces here in the city of Chicago, and how would you address those things?
I think the top priorities in Chicago are making our schools better places that educate children. We need to make neighborhood schools robust, offer opportunities for all children to learn in every single neighborhood. That is a cornerstone of my priorities as mayor of the city of Chicago. That needs to happen because in some neighborhood schools don't get their fair share of good, experienced teachers. They don't get resources for the schools. They don't have good libraries. Those are essential things in order for education to occur. I also support urgently the creation of an elected school board to bring accountability to the system. I voted against the bill that gave absolute power to the mayor of the city of Chicago to have absolute control over the Chicago public schools. We've been operating that way since 1995. We need to do something different that makes Chicago schools like the rest of the schools in the state of Illinois, having accountability through an elective school board.
Well, with the elected school board, does the school board really have any power anymore? We understand that the past Mayor Daley had stripped the board of much of its powers. I'm talking about purchasing powers, and stripping the board of much of its powers on the front end, knowing that an elected school board is an inevitability. It's going to come anyway because it's now being put on referendums and so forth. It's going to happen anyway. Is the school board, under your direction as Chicago's mayor, going to really have any power to make decisions?
Absolutely. An elected school board in throughout Illinois makes very important decisions about budget. It makes important decisions about curriculum. It makes important decisions about how the schools are going to be run. And citizens have a right, I believe, a constitutional right to choose who runs their schools. I believe it's a democratic right and a constitutional right. Schools are one of the most important institutions that we have in society, and citizens ought to have a say-so. Presently, the mayor has absolute control and power over everything that occurs in the Chicago public school system. We need to have good educators running the public school system and a board that is accountable to the citizens who pay taxes.
So you think that the school board should be comprised of what kind of people?
I think they can be people from all walks of life. They can be educators, they can be workers, they can be professionals, they can be ordinary people who are truly passionate and who have the time and the disposition to become knowledgeable about education.
Do you see parents being on the board?
Of course, certainly a possibility. Parents who have a deep passion for improving public education, who are able to dedicate time to learning, to attending meetings, to attending hearings, to engage the stakeholders in the public school system. Parents, students, community leaders, nonprofit organizations, all of that is required to improve the public school system in the city of Chicago.
It's been said that the majority of the decisions that the LSCs have been making in the past years now are non-existent. LLCs just don't have any power anymore. What are you going to do to work with the local schools and their LSCs to see that they are actually working together with administration?
When I was in the city council, I supported school reform. I supported the legislation that created the local school councils who had the authority to hire and fire principals, to approve school improvement plans, to have greater say-so over the functioning of the school, and to be real partners with principals and teachers in improving local schools. They have lost some of that power over time. I think that power, as well as capacity building and training to local school councils, is part of the recipe for improving our schools, but also involving community residents. It's the embrace of schools in every neighborhood that will help improve schools and make people feel like real stakeholders in the improvement of conditions for young people to learn in Chicago.
Very good. If you've just joined us, my name is Mark Stevenson. My guest today on Chicago Perspectives is Cook County Commissioner of the 7th District, Jesus Chuy Garcia. And we want to thank him again for taking the time from his schedule. He's running for mayor, folks. When is Election Day? And I understand there's more than one election day for every election day.
Well, that's true. Remember that the formal election day is Tuesday, February 24th, but then there is early voting and also absentee voting by mail. Early voting begins on February the 9th and runs through Saturday, February the 21st. You can vote at a local polling place in your community. Many parks are usually these polling places. You can also vote at the Board of Elections. Vote early, it's more convenient. Don't worry about snowstorms. The important thing is to get it done early, get it out of the way, and exercise your right to vote.
Wow, and the absentee ballots that are also important. There's a lot of people who cannot get out to vote on election day. Absentee ballots are just as important.
Yes, they will be mailed to your home once you fill out an application. You put it back in the mail. And your vote will be mailed to the Board of Elections and counted on election day. It's very easy. If you can't get out and about or you don't get out too much in the winter, no problem. You can vote by mail. You can vote early. There's a way to do it. The important thing is to make your vote count.
And on election day, folks, you also need to know that throughout Cook County, and in the city of Chicago in particular, that as young as 17, you can be a judge of election. Yes, you can, as young as 17 years old. So make sure that you get in touch with the Chicago Board of Elections and the Cook County Board of Elections to find out how you can be a judge of elections. You can participate at a high level and make sure that this election is a fair one, because this is going to be a tough one. Speaking of tough things, Commissioner, how are you going to fight this David and Goliath battle when you talk about that there is a difference of Rahm Emanuel having $11 million in his coffers as opposed to you just reaching $1 million? How are you going to fight this kind of battle with 1 to 11?
Well, we're off to a great start, I want you to know. First of all, my candidacy registered more signatures than any other candidate who filed for mayor. We didn't pay anyone a cent for collecting signatures, and we collected over 63,000 signatures in a 3-week period.
What do you mean you didn't, excuse me, what do you mean you didn't pay anyone a cent? Is that a common practice nowadays?
It seems to be more common as more money creeps into politics. Money is being used for everything. We had over 1,000 volunteers circulate my petitions, and that's why we got so many signatures from throughout the city of Chicago. Other candidates paid people to collect signatures for them, and even still, they couldn't file more than 43,000, and they had several months to do it. What I'm saying, Mark, is that we have people powering my campaign. As a result of that, we've been able to open 6 neighborhood offices plus 1 central office of my campaign. And as you read, you made reference to it earlier as we conversed, I've raised over $1 million, and we're embarking on raising the second million. All that to say that we will have the necessary resources to take our message to all voters in the city of Chicago. Plus, we have thousands of volunteers who are going to be knocking on doors everywhere in Chicagoland, in Jefferson Park, in Beverly, on the southwest side, Chicago south side. We're going to be in the southeast side, everywhere in Chicago, letting people know that change is possible, that my candidacy is a winning candidacy because it's rooted in the belief that we build coalitions across race, across ethnicity, across lines of faith, coming together, building common ground, and taking Chicago back in a democratic manner for the people and especially the neighborhoods.
Well, if that be the case, I want you to take this opportunity. Don't look at me. Look into the camera and tell them what the real truth is. If you are needing their help to volunteer for your campaign, why should they care?
Because I am the only candidate in this race who has the experience as a community builder, reducing violence. I'm the only candidate in this race who has an urban planning degree from the University of Illinois, who has worked to open schools after school hours to make them the center of community. And I'm the only candidate, as we mentioned previously, that served in the Chicago City Council as a state senator in the Illinois General Assembly. And over the past 4 years, I'm very proud to say, I have been the floor leader for Tony Preckwinkle, president of the Cook County Board, as we took a government that was adrift. We took a government that had a bad reputation. We made it transparent, accountable to the people of Cook County, and now it enjoys a great reputation nationally. There's a story about a great turnaround. I'm proud of our record at Cook County government.
You know, on the way to this interview this evening, I received a phone call from a community organizer who knew that I was going to be doing this interview, and he told me, he said, you know, Chewy Gluey, Gluey Chewy, that's what he said. Gluey Chewy is a person that can bring all of the different communities together. I've heard that more than once. Do you think that you can actually attract the African American vote and the Caucasian vote in the city of Chicago to support you, and if so, why?
I know that my history and relationships with African Americans on the Southwest Side, where many public employees live, policemen and firemen and teachers on the Northwest Side, will heed the message and the call. I've had relationships with Chicago's Jewish community, Chicago's Muslim community. I've been an ally of the gay and lesbian community. I have worked over a 30-year period at getting to know people, working with them side by side to improve our neighborhoods, to make our city a welcoming place. We have fought for positive change. We've struggled for housing in different communities, to redevelop commercial arteries and make them stronger. I have been a community development practitioner, and I have an extensive network of friends and allies in all of Chicago's neighborhoods, because I have been dedicating my life to figuring out ways to improve communities in Chicago. A real community builder and a progressive politician.
Then where are these African American elected officials? When we take a look at the African Americans that come together to support you, it's noticeably absent of black elected officials in particular, and then of your own community. If we take a look at Mr. Gutierrez, we're just absolutely surprised to see that he is supporting the Mayor Emanuel as opposed to supporting you. Why do you think that this is the case?
Let's be clear. You mentioned money, a big sum of money earlier. $10 million, $11 million. People are afraid. People are cautious. People are waiting to see what happens. What's happening? The polls are showing that I am the leading opponent to Rahm Emanuel. People are taking note of the fact that our campaign is having a presence all over the city of Chicago. People know that we're building momentum. What will happen? People will push their leaders to come around and develop the courage to say, you know what? Things are changing in Chicago. There is a movement here for change. It's time to be a part of that movement. Perhaps they weren't leaders at the beginning. They have a chance to get on board and become a part of a transformative campaign that will take Chicago back for the ordinary person, involve people in decision making, build consensus, and be respectful of everyone, including people who have different views than the views that I may have.
What do you think that are the things that the average citizen is really looking for from you in particular?
I think people want honesty. I think people want candor. I think people are looking for someone who is going to have the ability to sit and listen to them. They want respect. They want some time. They want to be able to tell people what's wrong, what's right. and they want to be able to share their ideas about what direction the city should be heading in. They want to be included. That's all. They don't have great expectations. They don't want handouts from the city. They just want to know that their voice counts.
Speaking of listening, I was noticing recently you did a roundtable discussion with some young people, and they say that the young people are going to carry quite a few votes in this upcoming election. And you sat there and didn't say much at all, that you just sat there and listened. Why?
Because I'm a good listener. Young people are smart, and they know how to detect a regular politician. They are not easily fooled, and they want to know that if you're seeking an office, you're going to be a good listener. So I sat there, and it was their turn to share with me their fears, their aspirations. They had good suggestions about how the city can be more friendly to young people, and they have good ideas.
Are you going to include them in your administration?
I have to include them in the administration.
How?
Because young people have stopped participating in government. They've stopped participating in elections. They feel turned off. They feel like no one listens to them. I want to show them that I'm a good listener.
What about ex-offenders, people in recovery? Those folks are people too, and they're looking for hope. They're looking for hope. They're counted out of government jobs. The only opportunity that they've had as ex-offenders over the last few years are cleaning up some buses on for the CTA. Are you going to open some doors for ex-offenders?
It is essential that people who have been incarcerated have opportunity to them. Banning them from jobs is a bad practice because it only results in the concentration of poverty in certain parts of the city. It may have been poverty in the first place that drove them to commit a crime, to make a mistake, to get caught with drugs, and because of mandatory sentencing, they wound up in prison. We can't continue to punish them. If they serve their time, they ought to be treated with respect and dignity and given opportunities, especially as it relates to economic empowerment. We've learned over the past few years that there's been a disproportionate implementation of drug laws, and that the vast majority of people who wind up in jail because they're poor, because they don't have lawyers to defend them, are poor people. And they happen to be primarily African American and Latino and poor whites.
Thank you, Commissioner. We only have a few minutes left in today's show, and I'm really interested in having you talk to the people directly and letting them know, what do you think that you can do better than any one of the other candidates that are running for this office?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I offered my candidacy for mayor approximately 2 months ago. And I did so out of a sense of great urgency that Chicago has not been functioning for the ordinary person. Given my community building background and practitioner and looking for ways to improve neighborhoods throughout Chicago, where I've developed a vast network of relationships, I've learned much about how the city functions and how the city can function, how it can provide greater opportunity if we focus on rebuilding neighborhoods and neighborhood revitalization. When we provide greater safety and good schools, we create the basis for local economic development. We create the basis to be able to attract employers like manufacturers and industries, clean industries that will provide good paying jobs to people all over Chicago. I believe that I have the practical community building experience, that I have the greatest amount of government experience, having served as an alderman, as a state senator, and a Cook County commissioner. I've also been very active in the philanthropic world, working as a board of trustees member of a Chicago foundation where we have invested in especially Chicago's most disinvested communities. So I understand neighborhoods in Chicago. I understand working people. I understand senior citizens, and I understand retirees and the fears that they have about the future. If we band together, we can put Chicago on a course that will be fair, that will be equitable, that will be transparent, and where people will hear from me what the reality and the truth of city situations is with respect to the budget, with respect to important issues that we'll be facing in the future, because I will be embracing of neighborhoods, I will be a good listener, and I will be a collaborator seeking to lead through consensus.
We hope to hear you speak more to the young people. A lot of them don't know, Commissioner, that you have had a relationship with Harold Washington. They don't even know who Harold Washington was and the work that you all did together.
And Mark, they may not even know that I served in the Illinois Senate with a young fellow by the name of Barack Obama.
Yes,
As a matter of fact, I taught him the ropes to the Senate when we served with Senator Emil Jones, who was the leader of the Senate at that time of the Senate Democrats. So those are things that they don't know, but it's because of your show that I've had the opportunity to share some of my experience with everyone in Chicago, but especially young people.
We appreciate that very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we really appreciate you tuning in tonight. And I want you to know that our guest tonight was 7th District Cook County Commissioner Jesus Chuy Garcia. And as always, I tell you, there's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's the real truth. But tonight, you've heard Jesus Chuy Garcia's truth, and I hope that you have enjoyed tonight's show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.